Hey guys! Tonight we're doing something a little different. Instead of swords and battles or tales of plague and peasants, we're slipping into something quieter, stranger, softer. You're going to ancient Athens, not for war, not for politics, but for sleep. Sacred sleep. Healing sleep. The kind that comes not with melatonin or chamomile tea, but with incense smoke, snake symbols, and murmured prayers in marble temples. You've probably had some wild dreams before, but imagine if people once believed those dreams could cure your back pain, your anxiety, even your heartbreak. Yeah. The ancient Athenians didn't go to therapy. They went to sleep temples. Now I know what you're thinking. How bad could it be? Well, if you're not a fan of sharing a straw mattress with 30 strangers while a priest lets snakes loose across your blanket, spoiler alert, you wouldn't last a night. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these little sleepy stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag your feet along the sun-baked stone road, worn sandals slapping the dust, as olive trees cast long, dappled shadows across your path. The air is thick with the scent of rosemary and something deeper, sweet and smoky, drifting from ahead. Athens is humming in its late afternoon stillness, but not with politics or protests. No philosophers today, no angry crowds, just the quiet murmur of people waiting for nightfall, for dreams, for healing. You're following a group of locals, men, women, even children, each clutching offerings in baskets, figs, oil, small cakes shaped like animals, and a few clutching carefully folded pieces of cloth. You assume it's a blanket. You hope it's a blanket. They lead you through the winding paths of the city until you reach the edge of the Acropolis hill. Nestled between crumbling columns and flowering shrubs stands a modest but elegant building. The Temple of Asklepios. Not the grandest temple in Athens, but certainly one of the most visited. The air around it seems to shimmer, not with heat, but with expectation. You step into the stone courtyard, greeted by the gentle trickling of a fountain shaped like a coiled serpent. Around the rim of the fountain are votive plaques, each one etched with crude depictions of healed body parts. A foot here, a uterus there, a pair of eyes, even a nose. One particularly detailed carving shows a man grinning proudly while pointing to his now functional knee. Subtle? Not at all. But effective PR. An acolyte approaches, his robe a little too long, sandals flopping with each step. He welcomes you with a quiet nod, then motions to a table covered in what looks like registration scrolls. Yes, even in the 5th century BCE, there was paperwork. You scribble your name, sort of, then hand over your offering. The acolyte inspects your modest little cake, gives a nod of approval, and gestures for you to enter. The inner chamber is cool and dim, lit by tiny clay lamps that flicker like fireflies. Stone benches line the walls, and overhead, painted scenes of serpents, stars, and half-sleeping figures gaze down from a domed ceiling. It feels like you've walked into a dream before you've even closed your eyes. You're told to find a spot, any spot, on the sleeping floor. The incubation room, they call it. Dozens of mats are already spread across the stone tiles, some with fresh straw, others looking well used, like that one seat on the bus no one ever wants. You settle in at the edge, next to a man mumbling a prayer to his aching shoulder, and a woman clutching a clay statue of a lion. It's hard not to notice the smell. It's not bad exactly. It's layered. Incense, sweat, old wool, honey cakes, and something vaguely metallic, like the memory of blood. Cozy, right? As the evening deepens, a priest in flowing robes begins chanting softly in the corner. The others join in. You try to mimic the sounds, though it's clear you're mouthing the ancient Greek equivalent of watermelon, watermelon. Then the snakes come out. Small, patterned, and eerily graceful, the temple snakes slither among the mats, coiling around ankles, flicking tongues against faces. It's said they carry the blessing of Asklepios himself. You're told not to panic, not to move. Just let them pass. Let the gods do their work. Someone nearby gasps in delight. "He touched my knee," she whispers, eyes wide with joy. You try not to think about what you'd do if a snake touched your face. Lying back on your mat, you stare at the painted ceiling as the night stretches onward. Outside, the sounds of the city fade. No more shouting philosophers or hammering blacksmiths. Just crickets. Just breath. Just the sound of your own heart slowing to match the hum of this sacred space. You're not sure when you drift off. Maybe during the second chant. Maybe after the third snake. Maybe it was when you realized the floor was surprisingly comfortable. Or maybe that was just your body giving up. In your dreams, a man with a serpent staff stands before you. He touches your forehead, says something you don't understand, then vanishes in a swirl of olive leaves. You wake with a start, unsure if it was just a dream or something more. Around you, others are stirring too, whispering, sharing fragments of dreams like morning gossip at a cafe. Some look peaceful, some look puzzled, a few are crying softly, relief maybe, or confusion, or both. You rise, bones creaking slightly, and stretch toward the flickering light. You're not cured, your sore foot still aches, but something feels different. Like you've been heard, like something ancient brushed against you in the dark and whispered, "Keep going." And with that, you step quietly toward the next part of this strange, sacred journey. You follow the slow procession of yawning bodies out of the incubation chamber, blinking at the morning light that spills like warm honey over the flagstones. The city is just beginning to stir. Roosters crow. A lyre plays faintly in the distance. But you, like many others, are still halfway tethered to the realm of sleep, trailing remnants of dreams behind you like loose threads on a cloak. The scent of roasted barley drifts from a vendor's stall nearby. But you're not here for breakfast. Not yet. There's one more step in the sacred ritual of healing. The telling. You join a loose circle of drowsy figures under the temple's portico, where an elderly man sits cross-legged on a low stool. His beard is snow-white and reaches the middle of his chest, braided with tiny bone beads. His eyes are sharp, too sharp maybe, for someone who deals in dreams. This is the dream interpreter, the Olorokritis. His job is to make sense of the things that made no sense while you were asleep, to spin meaning from strange symbols, fish flying, teeth falling out, horses with human voices. The works. He listens to each account with solemn gravity, nodding occasionally, tapping a stylus on his knee as if conducting a silent orchestra. You wait your turn, rehearsing in your head. There was a man with olive leaves in his beard. He touched my forehead, and I felt lighter. It sounds almost too simple, too boring. But when it's your turn, you kneel and whisper your dream into the man's ear, like you're confessing a sin. He nods, eyes closed, then says, "You carry too many burdens in your waking life. The god asks you to release some of what is not yours to bear." He opens his eyes. Also, avoid lentils for 3 days, just in case. You blink, uncertain whether that last part was divine wisdom or personal preference. Nearby, another visitor is describing a dream about being chased through a vineyard by a giant turtle wearing a golden crown. The interpreter doesn't flinch. He simply nods and says, "Your ambitions outrun your patience. Be still. And perhaps eat fewer grapes." You start to notice the rhythm of it all. The symbols, the lessons, the dietary advice tacked on at the end. There's something oddly soothing about it, like therapy, but with more snakes and fewer chairs. Some visitors nod solemnly and press coins into the interpreter's hand. Others look skeptical, muttering under their breath about nonsense and superstition. You overhear one man say, "I just came for the quiet, best sleep I've had in months." Fair enough. But many believe, because when the world feels chaotic, when medicine is guesswork and doctors suggest things like bloodletting and goat urine poultices, a comforting dream interpreted with confidence might just be the gentlest cure available. And this place, this temple of sleep, of stories, of subtle healing, it knows exactly how to cradle that fragile hope. As you wander the temple grounds, you pass a scribe copying dream reports onto clay tablets. He's meticulous, even correcting a character mid-stroke with a muttered curse. These records are stored in the back chambers of the temple, rows and rows of strange dreams turned sacred lessons. You wonder who reads them, maybe the gods, maybe bored priests on rainy afternoons. In one corner, a man sits on a low bench, openly weeping. You pause. Another visitor places a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something soft. You catch a few words, his wife gone, years ago, and how he saw her in his dream smiling, waiting by a fig tree. You don't need an interpreter for that one. Some say these temples heal the body, others say they heal the heart. Either way, the line between medicine and comfort here is as thin as morning mist. A trio of children scamper by, giggling, tossing pebbles. One of them wears a laurel wreath far too big for his head. Another clutches a snake figurine carved from green soapstone. You smile as they dart between pillars. No reverence, just play. And suddenly the sacred doesn't feel so distant anymore. It's in the laughter, in the scent of pine, in the way your shoulders feel looser than yesterday. A low bell rings from inside the sanctuary, signaling the start of midday rituals. But you've done what you came here to do, for now. You stretch your arms toward the sky and take one last look at the temple. The marble glows gold in the rising sun, and a breeze stirs the olive branches above. You're still sore, you're still uncertain, but something has shifted, just a little, like the weight of the world slid slightly to one side in your sleep. And as you turn to leave, the interpreter calls softly from behind you, "Don't forget the lentils." You laugh. Of course not. Later that afternoon, long after the incense has faded from your robes and the dream interpreter's voice has dissolved into memory, you find yourself lingering at the edge of the sanctuary once more. Something about this place keeps tugging at your attention. Not just the silence, not just the comfort, but the strange, sacred design of the ritual itself. You decide to ask questions. A younger acolyte, perhaps no older than 20, is rearranging clay lamps along the inner hall. He startles slightly when you approach, then offers a polite nod as you sit on a nearby bench and begin your gentle interrogation. "How does it actually work?" you ask. "I mean, sleeping and healing." He laughs softly, glancing around as if the stone columns might be eavesdropping. "The priest would tell you it is the god's will, that Asklepios speaks in dreams and his snakes carry his power. But," he leans in conspiratorially, "there is a method to the mystery." He explains that the process of incubation, that's the term they use, isn't just some mystical nap. It's a carefully choreographed experience. Visitors are deprived of heavy food the night before, made to fast lightly, encouraged to chant or listen to soothing instruments. The lighting is dim. The air is heavy with calming scents. Myrrh, frankincense, crushed laurel. All of it is meant to lull the body into a half-sleep, a state where dreams become vivid, almost real. Basically, it's ancient ASMR with snakes. And then he says, "There's the story." You blink. What story? He gestures toward the temple wall. You hadn't noticed it before. Murals running the length of the corridor, not scenes of war or conquest, but of people lying down, sleeping, dreaming, being healed. Everyone who comes here already has an idea in their head, the acolyte says. They've heard the stories about the woman who walked again after dreaming of a golden bird, the old man who found peace with his dead son after a single night in the sanctuary. People don't just come to be healed, they come expecting to be healed, and sometimes that's enough. You sit with that for a moment. Modern folks might call it placebo, but here in Athens they call it hope. Nearby, a priest is preparing the chamber for the next evening's sleep rites. He carefully unrolls fresh straw mats, sprinkles dried lavender across them, then places a carved figure of Asklepios at the centre of the room. His movements are slow, deliberate, almost tender, like he's preparing a nursery, not a hospital. You walk quietly through the space, absorbing every detail. The ceiling is low and curved, painted with images of stars and drifting clouds. The walls are lined with painted vines and gentle animals, owls, lambs, serpents with serene faces. In one corner, a small pedestal holds a brass bowl where a faint curl of smoke still rises. You recognize the scent now. Laurel again. The Greeks really loved laurel. In the far corner of the room is a small wooden screen. Behind it you hear soft breathing. Someone is already lying down, even though the sun hasn't yet set. Perhaps a regular. Perhaps someone in too much pain to wait for ritual hours. You move to leave, but then pause and turn back. Has anyone ever not dreamed? You ask the acolyte. He considers that. Sometimes. Though the priests will say it only means the god is still thinking. That seems both reassuring and mildly terrifying. As you step outside into the golden Athenian sun, a gust of wind catches your robe, and you feel the shift in temperature like a gentle nudge between worlds, from shadow to light, from mystery to clarity. You glance back at the temple, half expecting something theatrical, a dove maybe, or a vision. Instead you just see dust rising and the flick of a lizard tail vanishing between stones. The healing, it seems, is rarely dramatic. It's slow, subtle, woven into the fabric of your day without you realizing. And perhaps that's the genius of it all. The ancient Athenians didn't build sleep temples because they had all the answers. They built them because they knew people needed space to rest, to reflect, to believe in the possibility of mending, even when the body refused. You keep walking, your feet lighter than when you arrived. Not healed, maybe, but not untouched either. And behind you, the temple waits, still, quiet, ready for the next visitor who dares to dream. The next evening, after wandering the city's marketplace and eavesdropping on a particularly heated debate between two men over the price of goat cheese, you return to the sanctuary. It calls to you. Not with trumpets or grandeur, but with a sort of quiet gravity, like an exhale waiting to be followed. You're not alone, of course. As twilight settles over Athens like a purple veil, people once again gather at the steps of the sleep temple. But tonight there's something different in the air, a hush, a slow hum of expectation. You notice the scent first, not frankincense, not laurel, but something muskier, more primal. And then you see them. Snakes, dozens of them. Not wild ones, well, not exactly. These are the temple snakes, sacred and cared for, their scales gleaming like burnished bronze in the lamplight. They move with eerie grace through the columns and courtyards, not in fear, not in haste, but like they own the place. Which, in a way, they do. One slips past your foot, flicking its tongue near your sandal. You freeze. It freezes. For a heartbeat, the two of you just exist together. Then it slithers away, as if deciding you're not interesting enough to bless or bite. The priest nearby sees the encounter and smiles. That's a good sign, he whispers. Of what exactly you're not sure. But hey, it's probably better than a bad sign. The snake, in the world of Asklepios, isn't feared. It's revered. A symbol of rebirth. Renewal. Its shedding skin, a metaphor for transformation. These creatures glide between the waking and the dreaming, the mortal and the divine, as easily as you walk between rooms in your house. Or at least, easier than you do before morning coffee. The priest explains that snakes roam the temple freely during incubation nights. Not just for dramatic flair, though they certainly add it, but as part of the healing process. Their presence is said to carry divine energy. If one curls up beside you as you sleep, that's a powerful omen. If one touches your chest, well, don't expect to need bandages anymore. Some visitors request the snakes, others fear them but come anyway. And a few, you hear, leave in the middle of the night when one slithers too close. Not exactly your average spa treatment. You enter the sanctuary once more, this time with fewer nerves and more curiosity. The mats are freshly arranged. Someone hums a soft melody, a lullaby you don't recognize, but that feels familiar in your bones. As you find your place, a new face joins the room. A boy, maybe 12, guided by an older man with a trembling hand. They whisper their prayers together before lying down. The boy clutches a carved figure of Asklepios to his chest. The man just breathes, slow, measured, and weary. You lie back again, staring up at that domed ceiling, counting stars that don't move. The flicker of the lamps dances across the walls, creating serpentine shadows that slither without making a sound. And slowly, like mist curling in on itself, the world around you softens. You drift, not into unconsciousness, but into something in between. A place where logic loosens, where you no longer question why you're floating over a river of polished marble, or why a serpent is wearing a crown and reciting poetry about knees. Yes, knees. Your dream self seems to find it profound. In the morning, the boy is smiling. The old man is crying. You overhear their hushed conversation. The boy dreamed of flying over fields of golden wheat, and when he landed, his legs no longer hurt. There's no X-ray to prove anything, no chart to mark improvement. But when he walks, really walks, out of the temple without assistance, even you feel your heart twist a little. Was it real? Was it divine? Was it just the power of belief? These are the kinds of questions ancient Athenians didn't need to answer. They weren't interested in proving magic. They were interested in feeling better. And if that meant snakes and dreams and incense-laced nights on stone floors, so be it. As you leave the chamber once more, a snake watches you from the doorway, its body curled into a perfect spiral. Its tongue flicks once, twice. You nod in its direction. Out of politeness, out of superstition, out of the small, strange hope that maybe something in you has started to shed its skin too. The next morning you wander down the hill, your robe catching dust and your mind still floating in that foggy space between dreaming and waking. Athens bustles around you, oblivious to the sacred sleep you've just woken from. Merchants shout prices over carts of olives, children dart between legs chasing each other with sticks, and a goat, you're fairly certain, attempts to haggle with a baker over a bundle of leeks. But you're still moving at the temple's pace, soft, slow, as if the world around you is just slightly out of sync. Later you find yourself at a shaded corner of the agora, seated beside an old man who smells faintly of thyme and sour wine. He's dressed like a philosopher, or at least someone who desperately wants to be mistaken for one. A thin himation drapes over his shoulder, and his beard seems to point in 3 different directions at once. He eyes you for a long moment before saying, "You've been to the temple?" It's not a question. You nod. He squints at you, then takes a noisy sip from his clay cup. What did you dream? Let me guess. A goat with wings? No, a fish that spoke in riddles? Still no? Bah. You look like someone who dreamt of snakes dancing on your stomach. Don't worry. That's a good one. They say it means your intestines are aligned, spiritually at least. You chuckle, unsure whether he's joking or just deeply committed to chaos. He leans closer. You know, I went there once, years ago. Bad knee. Couldn't climb stairs without making sounds that frightened pigeons. Spent the night in the temple, dreamt I was flying. Typical. And when I woke up, still had a bad knee. He shrugs. But I felt better. Happier. Like someone had whispered, "You're not broken, you're just human." That's worth something, don't you think? You do. He tells you stories then, half remembered, half invented, of other visitors to the sanctuary. A sailor who dreamt of dolphins and never got seasick again. A widow who saw her husband in a garden and forgave him for leaving. A baker who dreamt he was eaten by bread and afterward opened the most successful pastry stall in the city. You're not sure which are real, but that's beside the point. The stories work. They carry something forward, something ancient and tender. Because the Athenians didn't just believe in the power of sleep, they structured their lives around it. They gave it a space, a god, a ritual, and a whole profession built around listening to dreams like they were divine scrolls, waiting to be read. And in doing so, they did something oddly brilliant. They made sleep sacred. You ask the man about the priests, how they became who they are. He laughs. Mostly inheritance, a sprinkle of training, a touch of theatre, and a lot of confidence. You need to say things like, "The serpent symbolized the chaos of your inner waters without blinking." Try it sometime. It's great at dinner parties. Then he adds, more seriously, "But some of them really believe. And some of them know something. You can see it in how they walk, like they've been touched by whatever they're helping others reach." You sit together in silence for a while. A cicada sings from somewhere in the trees. The city hums around you, but it feels distant, like a low drone beneath the melody of something older, deeper. Eventually the man stands. He stretches, joints cracking like ancient scrolls unrolling. "Go back," he says, "not just once, as many times as it takes. The gods speak softly, but if you sleep often enough, you might learn their language." And with that, he hobbles away into the crowd, disappearing between a fishmonger and a pile of amphorae. You're left alone, half smiling, staring at a city that now feels layered in meaning. Streets aren't just streets, they're veins leading toward dreams. Temples aren't just stone, they're pillows for the weary soul. And tonight, you'll return. You don't know what you're seeking, but you trust you'll dream it. The sun is setting again, dipping low behind the olive hills, casting Athens in a warm golden hush. You've returned to the sanctuary almost without realizing it. Your feet seem to know the way better than your thoughts do. There's something magnetic about this place now. Not just the promise of healing, but the ritual itself, the rhythm, the quiet, the moment when the world says, "Shh, we're resting now." Tonight the air is heavier than usual. Incense lingers thick in your nostrils, something richer than frankincense. Maybe pine resin, or perhaps myrrh clinging to your robe like memory. You find your usual place in the incubation chamber, the same straw mat, the same cool stone beneath your back, the same priest with the same blank, mildly annoyed expression lighting the same clay lamp. It should feel repetitive by now, but it doesn't. Because each night the dreams are different, and tonight so is the company. You glance around. Beside you lies a soldier, young, his bronze armour unfastened and piled neatly by his side, his tunic sweat-stained from travel. He has the hardened look of someone who's seen too much for too long. On the other side, an elderly woman clutches a sprig of mint in one hand and whispers the name of someone, over and over. A son maybe, or a husband. Sleep doesn't care who you are, where you've been, or how much coin you carry. It takes everyone, equally, softly. Eventually the priest enters and begins the chant again, low and slow like waves against a shoreline. You close your eyes, and then the snake arrives. It's the same one, you think, or maybe just familiar. It slithers slowly across the floor, curls up beside your left ankle, and goes still. Its body is warm against your skin, surprisingly so. You feel your heartbeat match its stillness, your breath syncing with the rhythm of the room. You sleep. And in your dream you are standing at the edge of a cliff made entirely of marble tablets. Each tablet holds a dream. Not yours, others. Thousands of them. Maybe millions. You run your fingers along their etched surfaces, and they glow faintly under your touch. You read one. A woman sees her dead husband planting fig trees. You read another. A child speaks to a lion and feels no fear. Another still. A man walks into a river, dissolves into stars, and never looks back. And then you see your own. It's blank. A blank tablet. You panic. Surely you've dreamed something. Surely the gods didn't forget you. But then words begin to carve themselves into the surface, slowly, line by line. You lean closer, but just as the final word appears, you wake up. The temple is silent. The snake is gone. The soldier beside you is sitting up, eyes wide, a quiet grin tugging at his lips. He murmurs something, too low to hear, and clasps his pendant. The old woman is still asleep, her mint sprig tucked under her chin like a charm. You sit there for a while, letting the remnants of the dream settle like dust on your shoulders. It felt different this time. Not dramatic, not divine. Just quiet. Gentle. Like the gods whispered not a cure but a reminder. You're still here. Later that morning, while washing your hands at the fountain shaped like a serpent's mouth, you overhear a conversation between two temple workers. One says, "That soldier. He said he saw his mother in the dream. She told him to stop running." The other nods. "And the old woman? She dreamed of an orchard. Her son was there reading poems to the trees." They both smile, soft, knowing, as if they've heard stories like this 100 times, and yet still find something beautiful in each one. You wonder what they'd say about your blank tablet. Probably something annoyingly wise like, "The dream was meant for you alone." Typical temple folk. Still, you can't help but smile too. Because for the first time in a long time, you feel rested, not just in body but in spirit. You linger outside the temple long after sunrise, sitting beneath a crooked fig tree that leans lazily against one of the outer walls. It offers more companionship than shade, but you don't mind. Your thoughts feel slow, like honey trickling downhill, and your body hums with that particular stillness that only comes after a night of deep dreaming. You're not quite sure what time it is. The city, for once, doesn't seem to care. A man in richly dyed robes passes by, flanked by two stern-looking attendants. He glances at the sanctuary, sneers slightly, and mutters something about foolish traditions. One of the attendants snorts in agreement, then they're gone, swallowed by the clamour of the agora. You smile to yourself. There are always skeptics, even here in Athens, cradle of democracy, theatre, and philosophical chaos. There have always been those who roll their eyes at the idea of healing through sleep and symbolism. You imagine them giving sarcastic lectures about how dreams can't cure arthritis, or how snakes are not medically certified therapists. But they miss the point. The sleep temples were never just about physical ailments. They were about the things no physician could touch: grief, fear, longing, the ache of the soul when life becomes too much and your heart feels like a sack of sand sloshing around inside you. The temple gives no pill. It gives you time. And in a world where everything shouts, that silence is revolutionary. You think about the stories you've heard since arriving. The woman whose migraines ceased after dreaming of floating on a river made of milk. The boy who stopped stuttering after seeing himself sing to a lion. The farmer who finally forgave his brother after dreaming they were both birds perched on the same fig tree. There's one tale, though, that everyone keeps retelling, softly, reverently, like passing along a lullaby. It's about a man named Thales, a merchant who lost everything in a fire: his home, his wife, his son. He wandered for weeks, unable to eat, unable to sleep, until he finally came to the sanctuary, half mad and half starved. The priests laid him down, whispered the prayers, lit the lamps, and left him in the care of Asklepios. That night, Thales dreamed of a garden, a vast quiet place filled with olive trees and blue herons. He walked beneath the branches, alone at first, until he found 3 figures waiting for him by a marble bench. They said nothing, just looked at him, smiled, and vanished into the trees. He wept in his sleep. When he woke, the pain wasn't gone, but it had changed shape, softer, rounder, more bearable. He stayed at the temple for days afterward, not seeking more dreams, just breathing, just being. Eventually he left. And then he returned, not as a patient, but as a gardener. He now tends the outer gardens of the temple. You probably passed him without realizing it. He rarely speaks, just hums quietly and tends the plants like they're sacred scrolls with roots. You glance around now, scanning the garden. There, by the herb beds, a man kneels beside a rosemary bush, his hands dirty, his face calm. He catches your gaze, nods once, and returns to his work. Maybe it's him, maybe not. But the story stays with you, because sometimes the temple doesn't give you an answer. It gives you a rhythm, a place to fall apart quietly and rebuild slowly, one breath at a time. And you begin to understand. The real medicine wasn't the dream. It was the permission to rest. That night the sanctuary feels even quieter than usual. You'd think by now you'd be used to it. The incense, the straw, the whispers. But each evening feels subtly different, like the temple breathes a new rhythm depending on who walks through its marble archways. Tonight a musician arrives. You notice him right away, not because he's flamboyant or grand. He's actually quite small. His tunic frayed at the sleeves, and his sandals held together with knotted thread. But because of the object slung across his back, a lyre, battered and worn, its strings humming faintly even when still. He lays it carefully beside his mat, as though setting down a sleeping child, and joins the others without a word. The priest, perhaps sensing something special in the air, invites him to play. And he does. Not a full performance, just a slow, drifting melody. It barely registers at first, soft enough to be mistaken for the wind, or the low rustle of leaves outside the sanctuary walls. But soon it wraps around you, a warm thread pulling at the seams of your thoughts. The others begin to settle sooner than usual. Bodies sigh. Shoulders drop. Eyes close not out of duty, but out of surrender. It's then you notice something you hadn't before. The temple isn't just a place for sleep. It's a machine for sleep, a carefully engineered engine built entirely from shadows, sound, and scent. There's a reason the ceilings are curved. Sound flows more gently here. There's a reason the walls are painted with vines and clouds, images that pull the eye towards softness and blur. Even the incense is mixed to formula, not too sharp, not too sweet, enough to fog the senses, never to overwhelm them. The Greeks were no fools. They understood mood. They understood space. And they really, really understood naps. You lie back again, this time not out of exhaustion, but invitation. The musician plays, the priest chants softly, and then silence. You drift. Your dream this time is strange. You're standing in a room filled with voices, but no people. The voices are soft, overlapping, like the murmur of a distant crowd. They're telling stories, not to you exactly, just aloud. One speaks of a woman who dreamed she became a tree, and when she woke, her joints no longer ached. Another tells of a man who saw himself walking backward through time until he found the moment he stopped being kind to himself. One voice is laughing, another is weeping. You move through the voices like walking through tall grass. They part for you, brushing your arms, trailing down your shoulders. One of them, so faint you almost miss it, says, "You are allowed to stop holding it all. When you wake, you are already crying." No sobs, no sound. Just warm tears slipping down the side of your face and pooling in your ear. The lyre is gone. So is the musician. In his place is a small object on your mat, a plectrum, carved from olive wood and tied with a frayed bit of string. A token, maybe. Or a message. Or both. You don't mention the tears. No one asks. Because here in the sleep temple, crying is as normal as breathing. Some dreams are like knives, carving away what doesn't belong. Others are like lullabies, tucking you in more tightly than any blanket ever could. You carry that with you as you step back into the morning light, your face raw but calm, your heart louder than before. The next day something strange happens. You start to miss the temple before you've even left it. It's a quiet ache, low and persistent, like the sensation of knowing a dream is ending while you're still in it. You're sitting in the outer courtyard, sipping watered-down wine from a simple clay cup, and already you're looking at the entrance like a door that might one day forget your name. It's odd, really, how quickly the body adjusts to safety, to ritual, to gentleness. After only a few nights here, your muscles seem to anticipate the weight of the mat, the scent of smoke in the rafters, the soft chants echoing from one priest to another, like call and response between stars. And so, even before sunset, you decide to return early. Tonight you're not alone in your eagerness. Others arrive early too. A potter with clay still under his fingernails, a girl no older than 10 clutching a doll with one eye, a woman with a limp and a gaze so sharp it could carve marble. They settle in slowly, without instruction. There's no rush. The temple doesn't demand speed, it invites stillness. And tonight's ritual begins with something new. A priest approaches the center of the room holding a long iron censer, from which delicate chains hang like vines. As he walks the perimeter, the censer swings gently, releasing a new scent into the air, sweet but earthy. You can't place it, something between wet stone and honeycomb. The scent is unfamiliar, but comforting in a way you can't explain. The priest speaks softly as he walks. Tonight we call upon those who came before, not gods, not heroes, just those who dreamed before us. It's a strange idea, that you are part of a lineage, not of blood, but of dreams, that every person who lay here before you contributed somehow to the sacred sleep that hums in the walls, like the memory of thunder long after the storm has passed. You lie down as the last light fades from the marble columns. Someone begins a melody, not sung, not hummed, but breathed, a kind of wordless lullaby, shaped by exhalation and pause. You close your eyes and drift. In your dream you are walking through the sanctuary, not as it is now, but as it was centuries ago. The walls are brighter, the floors freshly swept, the priests younger, taller, more serious. You see the same room, the same mats, the same flickering oil lamps. But none of the faces are familiar, and yet every one of them feels like a version of you. A soldier, a poet, a grieving widow, a mother, a baker, a child missing teeth, each of them dreaming, each of them hoping, each of them laying down their burdens as if offering them to the floor itself. You watch them sleep, and then, in a quiet, surreal twist, they watch you, not with judgment, with recognition, as if to say, "We know this ache, welcome." When you wake hours later, the room is heavy with silence. No snakes tonight, no voices, just the steady rhythm of breath and the occasional creak of someone rolling onto their side. The censer still smoulders faintly, the scent curling upward in ghostly threads. You sit up, your body not lighter, but steadier, as if something in the dream placed a hand on your shoulder and said, "You're not alone. You're never alone. Not in sleep, not in sorrow." You leave the sanctuary that morning in a soft daze, but one thing feels unmistakably different. You're starting to believe in the power of collective rest, not rest as luxury, not rest as reward, but rest as rite, as ritual, as sacred inheritance. Tonight something else shifts. You notice it before you even enter the sanctuary, standing just outside its familiar columns, where the marble glows blue in the early twilight. The air is cooler tonight, sharper. There's no breeze, but the world feels like it's holding its breath. The others notice it too. People speak more softly than usual. Even the sandals on stone seem quieter, more deliberate. There's an energy here you can't quite place. Not anxious, not sacred, just expectant. And then you see them, the offerings. Laid gently at the foot of the temple steps, arranged not by the priests but by the visitors themselves. Small personal tokens, a comb made of bone, a folded scrap of wool, a loaf of bread wrapped in fig leaves, even a sliver of carved ivory, shaped into a sleeping face. No one speaks of them, no one explains, but the message is clear. Tonight isn't just about sleep, it's about surrender. Inside the temple is already prepared. The mats are arranged in a spiral, an unusual formation. At the center stands a small bronze brazier, its embers glowing like the heart of a quiet sun. The flames crackle softly, casting low orange light that pools and folds against the sanctuary walls like flowing silk. You find your place along the spiral's edge, lying on your side this time, watching the glow move across the floor. A priest begins to chant, but not alone. Tonight there are two voices harmonizing, one high, one low, like the sound of wind through pine trees layered with thunder far, far away. Their song doesn't rise, it descends, slowly, softly, drawing you inward. You close your eyes and dream. This time it begins not with an image, but with a sound. The clink of a cup being set down, the low murmur of laughter. Then voices again, though clearer now. You are seated in a circle, surrounded by strangers with familiar eyes. They speak in languages you don't know, but you understand them anyway. Each person offers a story, not of victory or war, but of a night when they broke. One tells of watching a parent die and feeling nothing, and carrying guilt heavier than grief. Another tells of years spent hiding from the world, afraid of being seen. One more speaks of rage so constant it became indistinguishable from breath. And they all say the same thing, in sleep I was forgiven. When it's your turn to speak, you open your mouth and say nothing, and yet the circle nods. They understand anyway. Because in the world of dreams, the heart doesn't need words to be heard. The dream ends not with a sound, but with a sensation, warmth, like arms around your shoulders or the sun on your back in spring. And a voice, not external, not divine, but somewhere within, whispers, "You are not too late." You wake with a gasp, not frightened, but full, as if something long locked away has begun to stir again. The spiral of sleepers around you is still mostly at rest, breathing in unison like a choir without a song. The fire at the center is down to embers, and yet you swear you still feel its heat on your chest. You sit up slowly. Outside, dawn paints the sky with pink and gold. You leave your own small offering at the foot of the stairs, a coin. Not valuable, but yours. Carried in your robe since your arrival, its weight now suddenly meaningful. You place it carefully, and as you walk away, you don't look back. Not because you're done, but because, for the first time, you're ready to dream forward. By now, your body knows the way to the sanctuary without your mind needing to guide it. The path through the city, past the baker who always forgets your name, past the fountain with the missing lion's head, past the crooked fig tree where cats nap at sunset, it's become muscle memory. A rhythm. Like returning to your favorite blanket after a long day. Like returning home, though this was never your home to begin with. And yet, it is now. You arrive just as the last rays of sunlight slide down the temple's outer columns. The marble catches them like soft mirrors, throwing golden light into the air, into your face, into your heart. You pause and breathe it in, feeling the warmth settle into your chest, like an invitation. Tonight's rite begins without a chant. Instead, there is music, low and percussive, like the heartbeat of the earth. A priest walks slowly around the chamber, tapping a wooden staff to the floor at even intervals, each tap echoing deeper than seems possible. It's not loud, but it moves something inside you. The others settle around you in near silence. There's no need for words anymore. Every footstep on the stone, every sigh, every rustle of cloth carries its own language here now. You've all been shaped by sleep in different ways, but you're being shaped together. You lie back and close your eyes. This time the dream comes quickly. You're standing in a long hallway. The walls are lined with hundreds of doors, each one different. Some are grand with golden handles and carvings of mythical beasts. Others are plain and wooden, worn by time. Some are tiny, child-sized. Others are towering and arched. You understand instinctively these are the dreams of others. You reach for a handle and pause. Then another door creaks open behind you. You turn. Inside you see your own life, but shifted, dreamlike. You're sitting at a table, but your hands are not your own. You are older, or younger. The light is wrong. Everything is both familiar and utterly strange. In this vision you are laughing, but you don't know why. Then crying, but you don't feel sad. You lean closer and see someone sitting across from you. You can't see their face, but they're holding out their hand. You take it, and the world collapses inward, not in fear but in intimacy, a folding in, like closing a book and holding it tight to your chest. The dream fades like fog at sunrise. When you wake, your hand is curled as though still holding someone else's. You sit up slowly. The room is warm with the presence of others waking too. Some with tears, some with soft laughter, some staring into the middle distance like they've just remembered something important they didn't know they'd forgotten. The priest walks quietly through the room, placing a single olive branch beside each mat, a sign of peace, a reminder of roots, of healing. You pick yours up and twirl it slowly between your fingers. It's still green, still alive. You wonder how many others have done the same before you. How many people have woken from sleep, not with answers, but with permission, to rest, to begin again, to hope. As you rise to leave, the temple feels different, not smaller but closer, not mysterious but intimate, like a friend who now knows your softest places and still chooses to stay. Outside, the sky is painted in that strange colour between night and morning. The city stirs. A dog barks somewhere. You smell bread, life continuing, and in your hand, the olive branch. Not just a symbol, a memory, a promise, a guide back, should you ever need to return. It's been almost a week now. 7 nights of dreams, 7 mornings of waking to sunlight warming stone and the slow, grounding sensation that something within you has shifted, if not completely healed, then at least been heard. By the city, by the temple, by yourself. But tonight, things feel unsettled. Not in a dangerous way. No thunderclouds looming, no omens carved into the walls. But in that odd, subtle way when you sense the narrative has taken a turn. Like when you're halfway through a book and suddenly realize the story isn't what you thought it was. You enter the sanctuary later than usual. The sun has already gone, and the torches lining the inner walls flicker with more urgency than calm. You glance around and notice a few unfamiliar faces. Travellers perhaps, drawn in by rumours or need or something harder to name. One of them is pacing. That's not normal here. Another clutches a scroll, reading furiously by firelight, her brow knotted so tightly it could hold back a flood. You take your usual place, but something lingers in the air. A question, maybe. A tension, a wrinkle in the fabric of rest. And then the healer arrives. Not a priest, not a dream interpreter. This man is different, taller, dressed not in robes but in a plain chiton, smudged at the sleeves. He carries no censer, no book, no staff, just a small clay jar, which he sets at the foot of the brazier in the centre of the room. He doesn't speak. Instead he kneels, opens the jar and begins to rub its contents into the stone floor. The scent rises, sharp, medicinal. Laurel, olive oil, crushed garlic perhaps. It stings your nose at first, but then softens, warming, almost nostalgic. The smell of kitchens, of remedies passed from grandmother to grandchild. This isn't ceremony, it's memory. You lie back, the scent curling into your lungs like a story you forgot you knew. And then comes the dream. You're in a marketplace, not Athens exactly, but something like it. All the stalls are covered in white linen, and all the merchants speak your name like it's the only word they know. One hands you a jar of honey and says, "This will not fix your pain, but it will sweeten it." Another gives you a stone and says, "This is the weight you dropped years ago. You left it behind. It missed you." You carry them both, unsure why. At the far end of the market there's a mirror, no frame, just glass hanging in the air like a sheet of water. You look into it and see yourself asleep. Here. Now. In the temple, you watch your chest rise and fall. You see your hand twitch slightly. You look peaceful. But your eyes behind the lids are moving, dreaming. The mirror ripples, and for a second it's not your face staring back, but the healer's. He nods once, not in approval, not in command, just acknowledgement. And then you wake. The room is still dark but quieter than usual. No one moves, even the flames seem to burn more slowly. You sit up and spot the healer, still kneeling at the brazier, eyes closed, hands resting on his thighs. He looks more like a statue than a man, but you can tell he's listening. Not to you, not to anyone, to the dreams, all of them. Later, in the courtyard, someone speaks for the first time in hours. "He doesn't talk," a man says beside you. "But they say he once dreamed for 3 days straight, saw his own death, saw his own birth. When he woke, he never spoke again, but everyone who touched his hands was able to sleep." You glance back toward the sanctuary. The healer is gone, so is the jar, but the scent lingers, on your clothes, in your hair, in your breath. And you wonder for the first time if dreams don't just carry meanings, but imprint them, like fingerprints on glass, like ink soaking into parchment. You press a hand to your chest where the warmth from the brazier still clings, and silently, without words, you thank the silence itself. The days begin to blur, not because they're uneventful, quite the opposite, but because time here seems to bend around sleep. You no longer count hours by the position of the sun, but by the weight in your limbs and the rhythm of your dreams. There's sunrise and there's the moment you lie down. Everything else exists in soft, unfocused margins. You begin to realize this place isn't just a temple, it's a threshold, and tonight it reveals something deeper. You arrive early, compelled by something you can't quite name. The city is still bustling, but you barely notice the noise. All your thoughts turn inward now, like a river folding back on itself. You pass through the temple gates and feel the familiar hush wrap around you, cool and dense, like the first breath after diving underwater. Inside the sanctuary is darker than usual. Only a few lamps are lit, and they seem to flicker more slowly, as if even the flames are growing contemplative. A new priest is leading the night's rite. She is older, her face deeply lined, but not with weariness, with presence. Her eyes shine like polished basalt, and when she speaks, her voice carries no melody, just stillness. She tells a story. A whispered tale passed down from the first keepers of the temple. You barely hear her words, but they thread their way into you like vines through a trellis. Before there was Asklepios, before temples, before incense, there were stones warmed by the sun, and people who lay upon them and wept until dreams came. They called it healing not because it fixed what was broken, but because it remembered what was whole. Then silence again. The dream comes before you even lie down fully. You are floating, not flying, not falling, just drifting, as if the air has thickened and become water. The world is dim, but not frightening. A twilight realm where every sound is muffled, every shape softened. You feel weightless. Ahead, a figure. They look like you, but older, softer, wiser. They don't speak. They don't need to. They reach out and place something in your hand. It's your own voice. You had forgotten you lost it. You take it gently, hold it to your chest. And suddenly you are back in the sanctuary, eyes open, breath shallow, palm clenched around nothing, yet your chest hums as though a bell has been rung deep inside it. Across the room others stir. One woman sobs quietly into her hands. A man stares at the ceiling like he's counting constellations only he can see. And the old priest, she watches you all with that knowing gaze, like she's seen thousands of versions of this night before. You sit up. The silence holds. And then she says just one line, almost a whisper. What you dream is not separate from what you are. The others nod. No one questions her. Why would they? You rise slowly and step into the cool night air. The temple behind you is glowing faintly now, like the embers of a fire not quite done warming the room. On your way out, you spot a new visitor at the gate. He hesitates, uncertain, fidgeting with the hem of his tunic. You catch his eye, and for the first time you are the one who nods. The unspoken message is clear. You're safe here. Because here, sleep is not a detour, it's a return. Tonight you arrive without hesitation, no lingering at the threshold, no scanning the faces of others. You move through the sanctuary like it's a part of your own memory. Your steps are slower, yes, but not from doubt. From reverence, the kind of pace you naturally fall into when entering a sacred space that no longer feels separate from you. The sanctuary welcomes you wordlessly. The familiar scent of smoke and crushed herbs greets your skin like a soft shawl being draped across your shoulders. The oil lamps burn low, casting gentle halos across the stone floor. The same priestess from last night stands near the brazier, this time not telling stories, but stirring a bowl filled with a thick mixture. Crushed figs, ground barley, and something darker you can't identify. You ask no questions, you don't need answers anymore. You lie down on your usual mat, and without cue the others do too. No chants tonight, no drums, just the sound of collective breath settling into rhythm, and sleep takes you like a tide. The dream begins in a library. It's vast and endless, its walls made of parchment and papyrus, stretching upward into forever. The scrolls float, unrolling mid-air, their texts written not in ink, but in light. You drift between them, brushing words with your fingertips, watching them flicker, then disappear like sparks. Each scroll contains a dream. Not just yours, everyone's. The sanctuary's collective memory. You begin to notice that some dreams appear again and again, repeated in different hands across centuries. A man swimming through stars, a woman climbing a staircase that never ends, a child chasing a serpent who laughs like a waterfall. There is comfort in the repetition. A quiet truth. We are not as alone as we imagine. In one aisle you find your own scroll, but when you reach for it, it rolls itself tight and flutters away. Not cruelly, just not yet. The dream shifts. You're in a field of olive trees, all bent slightly eastward as if bowing towards something just out of reach. The wind is warm, and you feel it pass through you, not over your skin, but through your chest, like your ribs are reeds in a pan flute. A voice, not yours, says, "You don't need to hold it all anymore." You wake with tears already drying on your temples. The lamps are still burning. The others are beginning to stir, but slowly, reluctantly, as if their bodies want to remain in the dream just a moment longer. You sit up and notice a small scroll resting on your mat, made of waxed cloth tied with a red thread. You glance at the priestess. She nods. You open it. Inside one line. The dream returns when you are ready to listen again. You fold the scroll carefully and press it to your chest. Outside, dawn paints the horizon in muted purples and soft creams. The wind carries a sweetness, fig trees in bloom. The olive branch you left outside days ago is still there, now slightly wilted but whole. And so are you. Not fixed, not perfected, but whole. Or at least, becoming. You wake this morning and realize something quietly startling. You no longer dread the day. It's not that the world outside has changed. Athens still chatters, pigeons still steal olives, philosophers still argue over things that make your brain ache. But your relationship to it has softened. There's less flinching, less rushing, more noticing, like how the sunlight falls across a cracked tile just so, or how the baker's laugh lingers longer than his customers' complaints, or how your own breath, for the first time in what feels like years, comes without that strange weight behind it. You don't smile constantly, you're not floating on some mystical cloud of enlightenment, but you're here, present. And that's something. That night you return to the sanctuary with a different kind of quiet, not the tentative silence of a seeker, nor the burdened hush of a patient, but the calm of someone who's learned the shape of stillness and chooses to wear it like a second skin. Inside, the mats have been rearranged again, this time in a circle. In the center, a small bowl of water, perfectly still, reflecting the flickering light above like a tiny mirror holding a piece of the sky. The priestess speaks only once. Tonight you sleep with your reflection. What you see in the water is not what others see in you, but what the dream knows. You lie down with your head facing the bowl. Everyone does. The silence is thick, like fabric soaked in moonlight. And the dream comes. You are standing in front of a mirror again. But this time it's not smooth. It's made of thousands of pieces, broken shards, each one a reflection of you, but different. In one you are a child, eyes wide, hopeful. In another you are older, tired, but smiling despite it. One piece shows you laughing so hard your ribs ache. Another shows you alone, afraid, reaching towards something, someone, just out of reach. You don't try to arrange them, you don't flinch from the painful ones. You simply look. And as you do, the pieces begin to move, not to form one perfect image, but to form a mosaic. Whole not because it's flawless, but because it holds all its fractures together. And then, like a thread pulling gently through cloth, you wake. The room is still quiet, but something is different. The bowl of water at the center has ripples, one after another, as if each sleeper's breath is shaping it. You sit up and gaze into it. Your reflection wavers, not because you're unclear, but because the water refuses to lie. It shows you in motion. Becoming. The priestess steps forward and drops a single olive leaf into the bowl. It floats. You realize then, the dream wasn't about finding answers. It was about learning to witness yourself without judgment, to sit beside your own reflection and not turn away, to rest with who you are, not in spite of it. Outside, the stars are still out, and the temple's walls hum with the quiet kind of energy that only comes when a truth has been spoken, not loudly, but deeply. You wrap your robe a little tighter, not out of cold, but to hold on to something. The feeling of being held by the night, by the ritual, by the reflection that finally met your gaze without flinching. The city feels quieter now, not because the noise has stopped. Athens still clatters with sandals and sellers, gossip and goats, but because something inside you has changed. You no longer brace against the sound, you let it pass through you like wind through a grove of cypress trees. Still, grounded, listening. You spend the day wandering aimlessly, not lost, just untethered. You trace your steps along worn stones, pausing now and then to watch light shift on water, or children chase shadows, or pigeons argue with statues. At one point you find yourself beneath an olive tree older than the city itself, its roots like arms holding secrets. You rest your back against it, eyes half closed, and you think, what a strange gift, to slow down and notice. When you return to the sanctuary that evening, the mood has changed again. Not heavier, not lighter, just deeper. The sanctuary is dimmer than usual, the lamps already low. No music, no chanting. Even the usual scent, laurel, myrrh, crushed herbs, is absent. The room smells only of stone and fire and earth. You lie down in silence, as do the others, and then the priestess speaks, just once. Tonight there will be no dream. You blink. No dream. You wait, thinking this might be part of the ritual, a puzzle, a metaphor. But then, nothing. No visions. No strange halls or mosaic mirrors. You lie there awake, eyes closed, surrounded by dozens of other breath-slowed bodies. All of you suspended in the same quiet tension. It's uncomfortable at first. You're used to dreaming now. You expect it. You crave it even. But still, nothing. And slowly something unexpected begins to happen. Your thoughts, once chaotic, begin to settle, not disappear. Just quiet. You notice your breath, the weight of your limbs, the sound of someone shifting gently beside you. And it dawns on you this too is the sanctuary's gift. Not escape, not visions, not even meaning. But stillness, pure unfiltered presence, the kind you can't perform, the kind that happens only when you stop chasing. And somehow, without sleeping, without dreaming, you begin to rest more deeply than you ever have. Hours pass, or maybe minutes, you're not sure, but when you finally rise, the world looks sharper. Like someone turned up the contrast on your reality. The stars outside pulse like heartbeat lights. The marble floor glows faintly underfoot. Even the dirt beneath your sandals feels alive. The priestess meets your eyes as you pass her in the archway. She says nothing. She just nods. You nod back. Because you understand now. Sometimes the absence of the dream is the dream. Sometimes it's not about what your mind conjures, but about what it finally lets go. And tonight what you released was noise, and what you received? A stillness shaped like peace. The morning after your dreamless night, the world feels unusually crisp. You blink at the sky as though it has been polished. Even the pigeons seem more elegant than usual, their wings cutting through the air like brushstrokes instead of chaos. You walk slowly through the waking city, but something in you hasn't fully returned. Not in a bad way, in a gentle way. As if part of you is still lying on that mat, eyes closed, pulse slowed, listening to a silence so full it didn't need to speak. That day you barely speak either. Words feel too loud. You eat a few olives, sip from a shared jug of water, and watch shadows shift across the temple's outer wall like an ancient sundial, marking time not in hours but in softness. By evening you return again, of course. But tonight something different happens. There is laughter in the sanctuary, real spontaneous laughter. Someone in the back makes a joke about snoring or snakes or sandal thievery, you're not sure, and a ripple of chuckles moves through the space like a breeze through reeds. You smile before you even know why. It feels good, not out of place, but human. The priest enters with no incense, no relics, no ceremonial object, just a large shallow bowl made of dark clay, smoothed by time, worn at the rim. He places it in the center of the room and invites each of you to come forward, one at a time, and whisper into it. Your burdens, your memories, your names, your secrets. He doesn't explain what the bowl is for. He doesn't need to. You watch as the first few step forward. Some close their eyes, others shake as they speak. One man simply stares at the bowl for a long moment, says nothing, and walks away with tears streaming down his face. Then it's your turn. You kneel before the bowl and lean in. You hesitate, not out of fear, but out of respect. You think of what you've carried for so long, the fears you never said aloud, the guilt that clung to your ribs like old wax, the ache of never being enough, the way you forgot how to rest. You whisper it, all of it. And the bowl, of course, says nothing. It only holds. It only listens. You return to your mat and lie down. Your body feels different. Lighter, yes, but also more solid. Like you've stepped fully into your own skin for the first time in a long time. The dream comes. But it's simple. You're walking through a garden. No symbols, no riddles, just soil beneath your feet and the scent of lemons on the breeze. You sit beside a pond and dip your feet into the water. Nothing happens, and it's perfect. You wake with the faintest smile on your lips, not because of a revelation, but because, for once, you didn't need one. The bowl is still in the center of the room. The priest lifts it carefully and carries it out, as though it's now heavy with all the words it holds. He doesn't speak, but as he passes you, you could swear you hear something echoing softly inside the clay. You are forgiven, not by a god, not by a priest, by yourself. And in that quiet, you begin to believe it. The next day, the temple doors are left open, not just figuratively, literally. The wide marble arch that normally welcomes you into dim sanctuary light now yawns open to the full brightness of afternoon. For the first time, sunlight pours across the stone floors, revealing every crack, every bit of worn mosaic, every mark left by sandals and staff and time. And no one is there to greet you. No priest, no acolyte, no chant, just the wind, tracing lazy circles around the inner columns. You hesitate for a moment at the threshold. It feels like walking in on a friend mid-thought, intimate and strange and oddly sacred. But the others enter behind you, and soon the sanctuary is full again. Not crowded, never crowded, but complete. There's no announcement, no instruction. Everyone just sits, cross-legged, quiet, facing inward toward the center of the room where no bowl or brazier or symbol rests, only a single stone. Round, smooth, unremarkable. But for some reason it feels like the most important object in the world. You sit too, and wait. Minutes pass, or hours. It's impossible to tell. Someone clears their throat. Another fidgets with the hem of their robe. A child begins to hum softly and is gently shushed by an elder nearby. And then a man speaks. He doesn't stand. He just says, "I used to be afraid of sleep. I thought it was weakness. I thought stopping meant losing. But now, I think it's where the truth waits for us. Quietly, patiently, like a friend who holds out their hand long before we're brave enough to take it. No one applauds, no one nods, but something settles in the room. After a while another speaks, then another. Stories rise like steam, gentle, unforced, full of pauses. No one responds, no one debates, no one fixes anything. They just listen, and you realize this is the final form of the sanctuary. Not ceremony, not incense, not dreams, but witnessing. A space not to be filled with answers, but held open long enough for truth to wander in on its own. When it's your turn to speak, you don't plan it. You just hear yourself say, "I used to confuse exhaustion with strength. But now I know. Rest is resistance. Stillness is sacred. And silence. Silence is a kind of prayer." No one says anything, but someone reaches over and places a hand on your knee, and in that gesture you feel something ancient and immediate. You are seen. You are part of this. You belong. Eventually the circle dissolves, slowly, without signal or cue. You rise with the others and walk into the evening light, not because the ritual is over, but because it no longer needs to be contained inside four walls. The sanctuary has done its work, and now it walks with you, in your breath, in your steps, in the way you meet the world, softly, gently, without armor. Just presence, just peace. The second to last night arrives with a breeze, a warm one drifting in from the hills beyond the city, carrying the scent of pine resin and distant fires. It moves through Athens like a whisper, subtle, invisible, but impossible to ignore. Even the city seems to pause for a moment, as if it knows something is drawing to a close. You do too. But not in the way endings often feel. No grief, no dread, no rush. Just a quiet acknowledgement, like the final notes of a song you've loved for so long that you already know how it ends. You walk the familiar path to the sanctuary. But tonight something changes. There's no mat waiting for you. Instead, each visitor is handed a small stone as they enter. Warm to the touch, smooth, marked with a single hand-carved line. A simple gesture, one line, one breath, one self. No instructions are given. You cradle it in your hand as you find a place on the floor, not lying down this time, but seated, upright. Others do the same, forming a loose spiral around the sanctuary's center. A priest enters. It's not the familiar priestess, or the silent healer, or the younger acolytes you've grown used to. This one is new, or maybe not new at all. Maybe he's been here all along, watching from the shadows, listening from behind columns. He carries nothing, no scrolls, no incense, just silence. He sits down among you, not at the center, not above you, among you. And for a long time nothing happens, no words, no chant, no dream. And yet everything happens. You sit there breathing with the others, stones clutched in palms, as if trying to memorize the shape of stillness. Your thoughts begin to slow, not forced, not silenced, just soothed. They lay themselves down like dogs at the end of a long walk, content to rest beside you without demanding attention. One by one, people begin placing their stones at the sanctuary's center, quietly, lovingly, like offerings. Some press their forehead to the stone before releasing it. Others whisper something they don't want anyone to hear. Some say nothing at all. When your turn comes, you rise without hesitation. You walk to the center and kneel. The moment you place the stone among the others, you feel something shift. Not in the earth, not in the air, but in you. Like a tension unclenching. Like a voice exhaling after centuries of holding its breath. You whisper, not words but a feeling. the kind you don't have language for. And then you return to your place. The center slowly fills with stones, dozens, maybe hundreds, all different, all the same. When the last stone is placed, the priest finally speaks. This is not a monument to sleep. This is not a shrine to silence. This is a memory of what it feels like to be held without needing to be fixed. You close your eyes and rest, not because you're tired, but because now you know how. You wake hours later in the pre-dawn blue when the city is still caught between stars and sunlight. The sanctuary is empty now. The stones remain, piled in the center, like a heart that keeps beating even when no one's watching. You step outside, and this time, you don't look back, because the sanctuary has followed you. It's in the rhythm of your feet, in the stillness between thoughts, in the memory of being witnessed and not erased. You return to the sanctuary one final time, not as a seeker, not even as a guest, but as someone who has become part of it. The marble steps no longer feel cold beneath your feet. The columns don't rise above you, they surround you, like old friends. Like trees in a forest you've walked through enough times to know the turns by heart. Tonight there is no ritual, no priest, no sound. The sanctuary is still. And for the first time you don't wonder what comes next. You simply walk to the center where the pile of stones remains, unmoved, untouched, undisturbed. They rest there, a soft monument to the unsaid, to all that was released without explanation. You sit beside them, quietly. Others trickle in. Not many, just enough. Some you recognize, some you don't. No one speaks. Not because they can't, but because they don't need to. You lie down one final time, no mat, no blanket, just stone beneath you and sky above, and something in between, a space not physical, not dreamed, but earned. You close your eyes and sleep. This dream comes differently, not in images, not in words, but in presence. You are floating again, but now you know the water. You are surrounded again, but now you recognize the faces. They are all the versions of you you've met along the way. The one who arrived exhausted, the one who clutched fear like a talisman, the one who wept silently after a dream of a mirror. They surround you not to speak, not to explain, but simply to be with you. Together, whole. And in the center of them all, there is a doorway. No frame, no destination, just an opening. You walk through it. There is no light on the other side. No revelation, just rest, just release, just being. And that's enough. You sleep and sleep. And when morning comes, you don't wake in a gasp. You rise slowly like a leaf lifted by wind. The sanctuary is bathed in gold. You gather your things, though you don't carry much now. You've left most of it behind. You walk out the gate. The city greets you. Loud, chaotic, beautiful. You smile at it. You walk into it. You carry no dream in your pocket, no scroll of meaning. But you carry something else. A kind of quiet. A kind of knowing. That no matter where you go, no matter how heavy the world becomes again, you now know where to return. Not to a temple, not to a mat, but to yourself, to your breath, to sleep, to stillness, to the memory of a whisper in the dark. You are enough. Now slow your breathing. Let your eyes soften. Let your body go. You've reached the end of the path. There is nothing left to chase. Only rest, only sleep, only peace. End of script. Sweet dreams.